Rejection shattered my future, but a secret email offered a full scholarship to the one place I dreamed of, only to deliver me to an alien twilight where the only assignment is survival. The email sat in my inbox like a digital tombstone. Subject line: admission decision. Your name. University name. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of my cheap particle board desk to keep from dropping my ancient laptop. For 4 years, every AP class, every volunteer hour, every agonizingly detailed essay about my childhood obsession with astrophysics had been aimed at this one moment, this one institution, Stellaris University, the Mecca of theoretical physics, my dream since I was tall enough to peer through a telescope. I clicked it open. The screen loaded slowly, the spinning wheel mocking my anxiety. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. I braced myself, taking a deep, shuddering breath that tasted like stale coffee and desperation. I scrolled past the polite salutations, past the flowery language about the strength of the applicant pool, and landed on the inevitable sentence. We regret to inform you that, despite the strength of your application, we are unable to offer you a place in the incoming class of 2028. The world tilted. It wasn't a rejection. It was a complete physical erasure of my future. The air left my lungs in a painful whoosh. I stared at the word regret until it blurred, feeling the familiar hot sting behind my eyes. Rejected. After all that work, all those sacrifices, my parents working double shifts, me surviving on instant noodles so I could afford the application fees, it amounted to nothing. I leaned back in my squeaky chair, the sound echoing in the silent bedroom, and the full crushing weight of failure settled over me. I was a statistical anomaly, a hopeful idiot who aimed too high. Then I noticed something else. Below the boilerplate refusal, there was a secondary message, flagged with an unusual, almost archaic seal. A silver compass rose overlaid on an open book. It wasn't from the admissions office. It looked like it had been added manually, almost as an afterthought. Curiosity, the stubborn twin of despair, pricked at me. I hadn't seen this logo before. Stellaris used a stylized constellation map as its official insignia. I clicked on the strange attachment linked at the bottom, labeled simply, Consideration Reversal. The file opened instantly, not as a standard PDF, but as a highly encrypted proprietary document that my cheap laptop barely managed to render. The text was sparse, direct, and utterly unbelievable. Dear applicant, your name. While the Stellaris University Admissions Committee has rendered its primary decision based on internal metrics and budgetary constraints, an independent benefactor has reviewed your file. This benefactor recognizes the unique potential detailed in your supplementary materials regarding deep space telemetry modeling. I frowned, leaning closer. Deep space telemetry modeling was the essay I'd almost cut because I thought it was too niche. The message continued, effective immediately, you have been granted the full Etheria Scholarship, covering all tuition, board, supplies, and a yearly research stipend for the duration of your candidacy at Stellaris University, or any equivalent institution of your choosing. This scholarship is irrevocable and unconditional. My jaw dropped. Unconditional? A full ride? I scrambled to check the sender's address. It wasn't a university domain. It wasn't even a university server. It was an obscure, untraceable domain ending in .org, registered, according to a quick Wowies check, only 3 weeks ago to a P.O. box in a jurisdiction I'd never heard of. This felt less like a scholarship and more like an elaborate, incredibly cruel joke. Who was this benefactor? And why were they bypassing the entire admissions process just for me? I was about to close the suspicious window, convinced it was a phishing scam designed to steal my banking details, which I hadn't even provided, when a final line appeared, shimmering slightly on the screen as if it were being typed in real time, even though the connection seemed static. We understand your skepticism. To prove our sincerity, please report to the old observatory tower on the Stellaris campus grounds tomorrow at dawn. A representative will be waiting with your official grant documentation and a first semester assignment. Do not inform the university administration of this correspondence. They are not aware of this arrangement. Dawn. The old observatory tower, a derelict historical building on the edge of campus that Stellaris officially closed off to students years ago due to structural instability. My hands were sweating again, not from rejection this time, but from a dizzying mixture of terror and intoxicating hope. If this was real, I was going to Stellaris. If it wasn't, well, I was already rejected. What did I have to lose by showing up at a spooky, abandoned tower at sunrise? I printed the strange email, the silver compass rose burning into the paper. I had to go. I had to know who was playing this terrifying game with my future. As I packed a small bag for the overnight bus journey, I paused, realizing I hadn't checked my spam folder in months. I clicked it open, expecting junk mail, but instead, nestled amongst pharmaceutical ads, I found another email sent just 10 minutes before the rejection. It was from the official Stellaris admissions dean. The subject line was chillingly simple. Urgent review required. Security protocol activated. It was entirely blank. The blank email from the admissions dean, coupled with the cryptic warning in the scholarship notification, churned the anxiety in my stomach into a cold, hard knot. Security protocol activated. What's security? Stellaris was known for advanced astrophysics, not black ops. Yet the urgency radiating from that empty message felt more authentic than the elaborate deception of the Etheria scholarship, which, despite its promise, felt too easy, too clean. I arrived in the city just as the first bruised light of dawn smeared the eastern horizon. Stellaris University dominated the landscape, a sprawling Gothic campus interwoven with sleek, modern research domes. I bypassed the main entrance, heading straight for the perimeter fence where the old observatory tower stood sentinel. It was exactly as the lore described, a crumbling stone cylinder, ivy strangling its mortar, topped by a rusted dome that looked like a giant defunct eye, staring blankly at the sky. The perimeter fence wasn't electrified or even locked. It was just there. I slipped through a gap where the wire had snapped away from the post. The air on the observatory grounds was different, denser, carrying the scent of damp earth and ozone, even though there hadn't been rain. I approached the heavy oak door of the tower. It wasn't locked either. It groaned open with a sound like a dying beast, revealing a suffocating darkness within. I fumbled for the flashlight on my phone, casting a narrow beam upwards. A spiral staircase of dark, worn iron wound its way up into the gloom. Climbing was a trial. Each step protested under my weight, the sound amplified tenfold in the stone echo chamber. My breath hitched with every turn, expecting a jump scare, a prankster, or worse, someone waiting with malicious intent. The silence between the creaks was worse than the noise. It was the kind of silence that suggested something was actively listening. When I finally reached the top landing, I found myself in the observation room beneath the massive antique telescope dome. But it wasn't derelict. The room was spotless. Dust sheets covered all the peripheral equipment, but in the center, bathed in the pale light filtering through the slit in the dome, sat a modern workstation. Dual monitors glowed softly, displaying complex algorithms I recognized instantly as the very telemetry models I'd submitted. And sitting at the desk, his back to me, was a man. He didn't jump. He didn't look surprised. He simply finished typing a line of code, hit enter, and slowly turned his chair around. He wasn't the benefactor. He wasn't a student. He was older, perhaps late 50s, dressed in an impeccably tailored dark suit that looked wildly out of place in this forgotten ruin. His eyes were the most unnerving part, a startling, almost silver gray, and they seemed to focus not on me, but through me. "You're late," he said, his voice smooth without inflection. "The transit window closes in 17 minutes. "Who are you?" I stammered, clutching my backpack tighter. "Where is the representative? What transit window?" He gestured dismissively towards the main telescope mount. "I am the designated liaison, and the window, my dear, is the only reason you are here. Stellaris University didn't reject you. We intercepted your application. Admissions is merely a layer of bureaucratic noise we tolerate for public optics." He stood up, moving with an unnerving economy of motion. "The Etheria scholarship isn't just money. It's a clearance signal. You passed the technical review. Now you must pass the assessment of character." He walked over to a metal cabinet I hadn't noticed before and opened it, revealing not documents, but a single perfectly preserved, antique brass box. The admissions dean's email, the blank one, that was our warning signal to the security apparatus that you were being moved outside their jurisdiction. They are not aware of this arrangement, but they will certainly notice you missed your supposed deadline. He placed the brass box on the console. It wasn't locked, but secured by a heavy, complex clasp that looked more like an ancient lock mechanism than a simple latch. Inside this box is the proof of your scholarship, the actual transfer documentation, but it also contains the initiation key for your first assignment. There is a price for true, untainted research, you see, a price that requires absolute discretion and sometimes certain removals. He looked directly into my eyes, and for the first time, I felt a profound sense of danger, something far beyond academic rivalry. "You have exactly 10 minutes to decide if you want the future you dreamed of, or the safety of the life you had. If you choose the future, you open this box, take what you need, and you never mention this tower or me to anyone ever. If you choose safety, you walk out now and forget you ever saw this email." He stepped away from the desk, moving toward the narrow door leading back to the stairs, giving me space. "Choose," he murmured, as the faint, almost subsonic hum of machinery starting up somewhere deep within the tower began to vibrate through the floorboards. I approached the desk, my eyes locked on the brass box. It seemed to pulse faintly in the growing light. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cool metal of the clasp, and as I did, the main monitor, the one displaying my own complex telemetry data, suddenly flashed, replacing the equations with a single live video feed. It wasn't the campus. It was a tight shot of my parents' living room miles away, and they were fast asleep on the sofa, the television flickering silently. Then a shadow, a tall, indistinct silhouette, drifted slowly past the window behind them, moving just outside the frame of the feed, and the man in the suit paused at the exit. a slight, knowing smile on his lips. "Time's up," he said softly. "What did you open?" My breath hitched, freezing the movement of my hand inches from the brass clasp. The image of the shadow passing my parents' window, a silent, impossible intrusion, snapped the tension in the room into a white-hot focus. It wasn't a threat, it was a demonstration. They knew where I lived. They knew who I cared about. The 10-minute countdown was a lie. The choice had already been made for me the moment I decided to climb this tower. I slammed my hand down on the desk, not on the box, but on the keyboard, bringing up the console interface again. The man in the suit, the liaison, was already halfway down the spiral stairs. "Wait!" I yelled, my voice cracking with adrenaline. "If this is a condition of the scholarship, I accept. But I need proof of my enrollment status now. I need to know my parents are safe." The liaison paused on the landing, his silhouette framed against the gloom below. He didn't turn around fully. "Safety is contingent on compliance, not enrollment. The documentation is in the box. Open it, initiate the protocol, and the surveillance ends." He turned and continued his descent, the sound of his tailored leather shoes disappearing almost instantly on the iron steps, leaving me alone with the glowing monitors and the cold brass relic. I had no choice. The university, the real university, had already rejected me. This shadowy organization had offered me everything, albeit wrapped in coercion. I took another deep breath, trying to channel the desperate ambition that had driven me for years, forcing down the rising tide of panic. If I was going to be a pawn, I was going to be a very well-educated pawn. I grasped the clasp of the brass box. It wasn't a traditional lock. It felt like a set of interlocking rings. Recalling the symbols etched onto the Etheria email, the compass rose and the open book, I manipulated the rings. They turned smoothly, silently, clicking into alignment. The box sprang open. Inside, nestled on black velvet, were 2 items. The first was a thick, cream-colored folder embossed with the silver compass rose. I snatched it up. The first page confirmed it. Full Etheria Scholarship Grant, signed by a foundation whose address was listed only as Off-World Registry. It was undeniably official-looking, comprehensive, and staggering in its generosity. The second item was smaller, heavier. It was a flash drive, not the modern rectangular kind, but an ancient, polished obsidian shard with a single glowing green indicator light. Next to it lay a small folded piece of thick parchment, the assignment. I unfolded the parchment. The script was elegant, handwritten. Assignment 0. The anomaly is localized in Sector Delta 7, designated the Void of Kepler 186EF. The required analytical engine is loaded onto the shard. You must analyze the data stream and verify the theoretical framework supporting the signal source. Success requires immediate extraction of the data. Failure to return before the next orbital alignment, T-minus 72 hours, will result in the cancellation of the Etheria grant and the subsequent termination of all related contacts. My mind raced. Kepler 186F. That was an exoplanet candidate orbiting a red dwarf star, famous in theoretical circles precisely because it was so far away and difficult to observe clearly. A signal? I looked back at the video feed of my parents' living room. The silhouette was gone. Relief washed over me, sharp and fleeting, immediately replaced by the pressing deadline. I grabbed the obsidian shard and jammed it into the USB port on the modern workstation. The monitor instantly switched from the live feed to a secure command prompt, displaying a timer counting down from 72 hours. Analyzing data stream, I mumbled, feeling a perverse sense of excitement that temporarily eclipsed the terror. The shard's green light pulsed rapidly. It wasn't just telemetry, it was raw, unrefined data, chaotic and vast. As my specialized software began to sort the noise, a pattern emerged, a repeating sequence that defied known physics, too structured to be natural background radiation. I worked frantically, cross-referencing the unknown sequence with the theoretical framework I had submitted in my rejected Stellaris essay. It matched perfectly. My theories, which Stellaris had dismissed as too speculative, were apparently the only key to unlocking this signal. The system beeped, signaling a successful initial decryption. A single short audio file was isolated from the noise. My fingers hovered over the play button. This was it, the first direct communication from somewhere else. I clicked it. It wasn't the complex mathematical sequence I expected. It wasn't a warning. It was a voice. Raspy, clearly strained, speaking English with a strange, deep resonance. If you receive this, the network is compromised. Do not trust the benefactor. They lied about the funding. The Etheria is not a scholarship. It is a capture warrant. The research you performed was merely the calibration phase. You are not being sent to study the signal. You are being sent to become the signal. Run. The tower is about to... The voice cut off mid-word. The screen didn't just go blank, it exploded in a shower of corrupted code, and simultaneously the entire observatory began to shake violently, not with the gentle hum of machinery, but with a deafening structural groan. The antique telescope dome above us shuddered, and a massive crack spiderwebbed across the thick glass viewport nearest the ceiling. Dust rained down, thick and choking, and I looked up just in time to see the silhouette of the liaison reappearing in the doorway, no longer calm, but frantic, his silver eyes wide with sudden panic. "They found us!" he screamed over the rising structural collapse. The transfer sequence initiated early. "Grab the shard and get to the maintenance hatch now." He pointed to a barely visible metal plate set into the floor near the telescope mount. "It's the only way out before the phase lock destabilizes." The world dissolved into chaos. The groan of the tower transformed into a shriek of tortured metal. I didn't need a second invitation. The sight of the liaison's genuine terror was far more convincing than any promise of a scholarship. The very air seemed to vibrate at a frequency that made my teeth ache. I snatched the obsidian shard from the dying workstation and stumbled toward the floor plate he indicated. It was a heavy, circular hatch, clearly designed for emergency access, currently secured by a three-pronged magnetic lock. "How do I open it?" I yelled, scrambling to my knees as debris rained down around us. The liaison was fumbling with his expensive suit jacket, pulling out a device that looked disturbingly like a specialized EMP emitter, except instead of frying electronics, it seemed designed to interface with heavy machinery. He slammed it against the locking mechanism. There was a high-pitched whine, and the three prongs retracted with a heavy thunk. "It's a one-way seal," he gasped, shoving the device back into his pocket. "It seals the interior from external breach, but it also serves as a temporal displacement anchor. Once you're through, it locks permanently from the outside. You have maybe 40 seconds before this whole structure is vaporized, taking us with it." He threw the hatch open. Instead of a dusty maintenance tunnel, the opening revealed a dizzying, shimmering void. It wasn't dark. It was filled with swirling colors, iridescent blues, electric violets, and sudden sharp flashes of white light that looked like distant, impossibly close stars. The air rising from the opening wasn't cold or hot. It smelled sharply of ozone and something metallic, like freshly polished copper. "Jump!" the liaison roared, shoving me hard toward the opening. I plunged into the shimmering field. It wasn't a fall. It was a violent dissolution of sensation. For a split second, every atom in my body felt like it was being stretched across light years. The sound of the collapsing tower, the cracking stone, the scraping metal, was instantly muted, replaced by a deep, resonant thrumming that seemed to originate inside my own skull. Then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. I landed hard, not on stone, but on something soft and yielding, like packed moss or velvet. I gasped, blinking furiously, trying to orient myself. The obsidian shard was still clenched so tightly in my hand that the edges were cutting into my palm. I was lying on an uneven surface under a sky that was perpetually twilight, a deep indigo canopy dotted with constellations I had never seen in any atlas. The air here was thin, cold, and carried the faint, organic scent of decay and sweet blossoms. Around me, the landscape was utterly alien. Towering, crystalline structures pierced the horizon like shattered glass mountains, and the ground was covered in bioluminescent flora that pulsed with slow, rhythmic greens. I scrambled to my feet, turning back to look for the hatch, for the liaison, for any sign of the temporal anchor point. There was nothing. No swirling colors, no metallic smell. Just a smooth obsidian wall of rock face rising behind me, utterly impenetrable. The portal had snapped shut, sealing me completely. I was stranded. Panic threatened to overwhelm me again, but the deadline timer on the shard was ticking relentlessly. 71 hours, 58 minutes, and 12 seconds. I forced myself to breathe the thin air, scanning the immediate area. I was on a small plateau overlooking a massive, silent valley. Then I heard it. Not the grinding machinery of the tower, but something biological. A slow, heavy tread, echoing off the crystalline peaks. Something massive was moving through the valley below, and it was heading directly toward my position. I flattened myself against the cold rock face, peering down. Through the twilight haze, I saw the source of the sound. It was large, segmented, and moved with a slow, deliberate majesty. It resembled a gigantic, wingless insect, covered in iridescent plating that caught the faint light, and it was stopping directly beneath the plateau. As I watched, paralyzed, the creature raised its massive head, its compound eyes, hundreds of facets reflecting the indigo sky, swiveling independently, scanning the immediate area. One of those eyes paused, locking directly onto my hiding spot. A low, clicking sound echoed up from the valley floor, a sound that unmistakably communicated recognition. And then, from the darkness just beyond the creature, a new light emerged. A small, focused beam, like a high-powered laser pointer, sweeping across the terrain. It settled directly on me. A voice impossibly clear, though seeming to come from everywhere at once, resonated in the thin atmosphere, directly addressing me. "Welcome, applicant. Your extraction was successful. However, the benefactor lied. The true assessment begins now. We observe your first contact." The voice, calm and utterly synthetic, confirmed my worst fears. The liaison, the supposed rescuer, was an agent of the opposition. The benefactor lied. They hadn't saved me. They had delivered me, a perfectly packaged piece of intellectual property, directly into the hands of whoever held this alien world. The spotlight from the unknown source was blinding, holding me pinned against the rock face. The colossal insectoid creature in the valley below shifted its weight, its heavy tread now replaced by the sound of scraping claws as it began to ascend the plateau toward me. I gripped the obsidian shard. 71 hours remained on the clock, the deadline for completing the assignment, the analysis of the Kepler signal, which I now realized was merely the key to activating my own transportation here. "Who are you?" I managed to project into the unnervingly silent air, hoping the shard's connection somehow transmitted my voice. The synthetic voice responded immediately without fluctuation. "We are the continuity. You were recruited by a rogue element, the Directorate, who sought to weaponize your predictive modeling for their own destabilization goals. The Etheria grant was a lure to extract you before they could fully integrate your cognitive matrix into their network. So, I wasn't a student. I was a stolen hard drive. The Directorate, the liaison, they wanted to turn my mind into an analytical engine for whatever strange signal this place was broadcasting. And the assignment? I asked, my mind racing through options. Fleeing the plateau was impossible with that Leviathan climbing towards me. The Kepler signal. The signal is a beacon for the Directorate's fleet. Your analysis confirmed its trajectory and integrity. By opening the shard and accepting the time frame, you validated the trajectory, making your extraction necessary for the continuity to intercept the Directorate's assets before they arrive. Suddenly, the ground beneath the colossal insect began to glow with an intense, blinding white light, radiating outward from beneath its segmented body. The creature shrieked, a sound of true agony, and reared back, trying to escape the light that was consuming the ground beneath it. The liaison's warning echoed in my head. "The phase lock destabilizes." "The phase lock!" I shouted toward the light source, hoping the continuity was listening. "Is that what you use to stabilize the local environment?" The continuity's voice returned, laced with a new note, a hint of grim acknowledgement. "Correct. The Directorate uses localized temporal distortion to mask their activity. Your presence and the activation of the shard triggered an immediate counter-distortion response from our perimeter defense systems. The creature below is a Directorate scout drone. It is being purged." The light intensified, vaporizing the drone in a silent flash of white energy, leaving nothing but smooth, scorched rock where it had stood seconds before. The synthetic spotlight focused back on me. "You have completed the first phase by correctly identifying the nature of the threat," the continuity stated. "Your survival is paramount to retrieving the remaining data stored within the shard, which is keyed to your unique neurological signature." The final countdown on the shard now read 71:55:04. I looked down at the device in my hand, no longer seeing a research tool, but a necessary key. "What do I do now?" I asked, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a strange, resigned clarity. I was irrevocably involved in an interstellar conflict I couldn't possibly understand. "You analyze the remaining data stream regarding the Directorate's primary insertion point. We cannot risk another retrieval mission. You will deliver the analysis to our designated collection point," the continuity instructed. From the shadow of the crystalline peaks, a new craft appeared. It was utterly silent, sleek and black, absorbing the twilight rather than reflecting it. It descended with impossible grace, touching down softly on the plateau 100 yards away. A single hatch opened, revealing an interior bathed in soft, warm yellow light, the antithesis of the harsh white purification beam. "Board the vessel," the continuity commanded. Your journey to Stellaris begins now. It seems you are enrolled applicant, just not at the university you expected. I walked toward the craft, the obsidian shard heavy in my hand, the cream-colored folder detailing the Etheria scholarship burning in my pocket. I looked back one last time at the alien sky, the silent monument to my impossible rejection and my terrifying acceptance. As I stepped across the threshold into the welcoming yellow light of the unknown ship, the voice from the first audio file, the one that had warned me, whispered one final chilling sentence, impossibly close to my ear, clearly overriding the continuity's broadcast. They didn't just want your analysis. They wanted the signal carrier. And now you've carried it right to them.